It was a Saturday morning, about 2 months ago, a hot summer morning, and I was taking my weekly 1.3-mile walk from my home in Roseville to our Jewish synagogue in Granite Bay. As I was walking down Douglas Boulevard, suddenly I heard someone from behind me calling for my attention. I turned around and I noticed a fellow walking towards me from a nearby parking lot. I waited for him, and as he approached me, he shared with me the following. He said, "I was driving down Douglas in the opposite direction that you're walking. But when I noticed you, I made a U-turn and came to this parking lot to be able to catch up with you. I just wanted to thank you for walking in our streets with such a public presence." You see, I was walking down Douglas Boulevard wearing my full Hasidic garb, not your typical scene in Roseville. And I felt it a privilege to be an inspiration for this fellow. This experience reminded me of a story I had read some time before. It was Hanukkah, 1931, in Kiel, Germany. Rachel Posner, wife of Rabbi Dr. Akiva Posner, took a photo of their Hanukkah menorah as it was sitting at the window ledge in their home, facing a building across the road that was decorated with Nazi flags. When the photo was printed, Rachel wrote on the back of the photo, in German, translated as follows: Hanukkah 1931. Death to Judah, says the flag. Judah will live forever, the light answers. Sometime soon after this, the family was forced to escape Germany, and they came to Israel in 1934. Some 80 years later, the descendants of Rachel and Akiva still continue to light each year on Hanukkah their candles using that very menorah that they brought with them from Kiel, Germany. The then popular and mighty Nazi party is gone, but the minority and persecuted Jewish nation is still alive and well. As a member of the Jewish faith, with a very long history of persecution and standing as a minority, I find it inspiring to hear stories such as this of Akiva and Rachel. It's a reminder that doing what's right, although it may not always be very popular, however, it is what makes the biggest difference. You may be wondering, though, where do people like Rachel and Akiva draw the strength to be able to stand and act alone in the face of such a mighty force? In 1951, Solomon Asch, an American-Polish psychologist, experimented by investigating the extent of which social pressure would influence an individual to conform to a majority view. He did this by experimenting with a line judgment task. Asch took a naive participant and placed him in a room with 7 Confederates. The Confederates agreed among themselves in advance what responses they would give when presented with the line task. The real participant was unaware of all of this, and he was led to believe that the Confederates were regular participants just as himself. The way this worked was that each participant had to state aloud which comparison line, A, B, or C, they thought was most like the target line. The answers were always very obvious. The real participant sat at the end of the row and provided his responses last. At the start of this test, all participants, including the Confederates, provided the correct answers. However, after several turns, the Confederates began to unanimously provide an incorrect answer. This study included 18 trials. The Confederates provided an incorrect answer for 12 of those trials, which they called the critical trials. Asch was interested to see whether the participant, the real participant, would conform with the majority view in the critical trials. Ash discovered that about 1/3 of the people who were placed in this situation went along with the clearly incorrect majority response in the critical trials. After the experiment, when these participants were interviewed, they shared that they didn't actually believe in their conforming answers. However, they went along with the majority for fear of being ridiculed. Now, if this was true in 1951, how much more so today, in a generation when social connections influence so much of our life? When many of us judge our success and worth by how many likes or follows we have. How can an individual have the courage to stand alone in the face of a large majority? Well, perhaps the following story can shed some light on this matter. The story is told of a man in his 30s who tragically jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge. When investigations were complete, it was found in his bureau, back at his home, a note that read as follows: "I will walk to the bridge. If even one person will smile at me on the way, I will not jump." Now, this is a shocking story. Supposedly, if one person would have smiled at this individual, they could have saved his life. Now I ask you a question. Upon whom do you think lied the responsibility to smile at this individual and save his life? It's likely that this man walked past hundreds of people on that day while walking to the bridge. And from among all of those people he passed, who was responsible to share that life-saving smile with him? Imagine if you knew that your smile could have saved his life. Would you have hesitated for even a moment, regardless of how many people would go along with you? I'd suppose that most of us here would not hesitate. Oftentimes, we brush away life-changing opportunities by mistakenly assuming that the responsibility lies on others, perhaps on some who are more qualified, better trained, or more experienced. But if I were to realize that it is my responsibility and my opportunity to be able to make a difference, then I would be empowered to act as a leader and not just merely follow the masses. You may have heard the story, the incredible story of Oskar Schindler. Oskar was a German industrialist and a member of the Nazi Party who saved the lives of 1,200 Jews during the Holocaust by employing them in his factories. When Mr. Schindler took on this mission, it was not popular in the slightest bit. In fact, he had to risk a lot: his own safety, his financial security, and perhaps even his own life. Yet, he was inspired to act in a time that he felt this was his mission at a very critical moment in history. And he did this in an environment that did not support or condone his actions at all. As a Jew, I believe that if God created 8 billion humans on this planet, each uniquely different, with not a single one being identical to any other, that it must be because each of us humans have a unique mission and purpose which no one else can fill. It's not about being more or less qualified, but rather about recognizing and realizing that I have a unique mission and responsibility to leave a mark in this earth where no one else can. I further believe that these experiences that I chance upon aren't merely coincidental. Rather, they are destined. So if I encounter someone in need, it may just very well be that this is a sign that it's my mission and my duty to act on this. It may very well be that this is my moment, an opportunity to leave a lasting impression on this earth where no one else will. Next time you're standing around with your friends and a group of people, and someone begins to mock someone in the group, think of Oskar Schindler and the sacrifices that he endured to save other people's lives. Think of this man just 2 hours away from here that couldn't find anyone to save his life. And then think of yourself. I'm a member of a religion that has been persecuted and endured a lot of hardship. And yet, my fellow Jews choose to honor their ancestors and act alone to inspire hope for others. Will you stand by the side and just be another face in the blur of the world? Or will you choose to act against what's popular, to save the life of others, even if it requires stepping away from that crowd?